So it's crazy to me that if you're to try to enforce the Third Amendment, you might have to work for years and years and years on the law, presuming that you could either afford a lawyer or if you're smart enough to do it yourself. Even if you enforce the Third Amendment perfectly, accurately, and to the letter of the law. So let's just presume that the Bill of Rights apply to all of us individual Americans, right? Now, Amendment 9 and 10, they're a little weird and different and special. So Amendment 9 and 10, they belong in a different category. But at the very least, Amendments 1 through 8, Amendments 1 through 8 are the law of the land. That's according to Dobbs. That's according to the thing that, killed abortion. So this means when you have the average Joe apple pie American is at home, just reading his Constitution, just has his little pocket Constitution, and he's sitting there reading it, and he's like, well, what rights do I have as an American? And they come across the Third Amendment. Let's read the Third Amendment together, shall we? The Third Amendment says that you can't have soldiers quartering in your house, right? Let's get the exact verbiage of it, okay? A lot of people want to talk about the First Amendment, they want to talk about the Second Amendment, but we never get to the Third Amendment. And the principles that underlie the first, second, third, fourth, all the principles are the same. Because the amendments are our civil liberties, and these civil liberties are the rule, not the exception. So amendment number 3 is as follows. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So this is a time of peace. If you had somebody from the military, let's just say the Air Force, you got some Air Force asshole that's just like, hey man, I'm going to use your house, and I'm going to live in it, and I'm going to use up all your candles. I'm going to eat all your food. I'm going to sleep in whatever bed you got. I'm going to quarter in your house. And why? Because I'm Air Force. I'm an Air Force. I'm an airman. I'm fighting for our country. And you should just be happy for the privilege of me staying inside your home. Now, soldiers used to stay in their homes when it was the British. The damn king would have a bunch of fucking soldiers, and he didn't have enough money to pay his soldiers, so he would just tell them, just live with the people. And then he had like specific laws about what they were allowed to ask for, what they weren't allowed to ask for. But no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of owner. So this is a peace. We're in peacetime right now. If you have an Air Force guy who tries to quarter in your house and they don't have your consent, they cannot do so. So the Air Force man comes in, comes up onto your property, walks up, knocks on your door, and then as soon as you open the door, don't even say anything to you, just brushes right past you, and then, gets a damn sandwich and is just sitting there eating a sandwich and getting crumbs all over the couch, and he's just clicking through the TV, watching the Addams Family, and just laughing up a storm. And you're like, wait a second, what the hell? Get out of here. I don't want you here. You're not allowed to be here. You don't have my permission to be here. So get the hell out of here. And the airman doesn't do it. The Air Force guy doesn't do it. So my understanding of the Third Amendment is that as an American, if an Air Force guy wants to come in and try to stay in your home, you're allowed to remove him. You're allowed to kick him out of your house. You're allowed to, let's just say, push. You're going to take the Air Force guy and you're going to push him. You're going to push him out of the house, and then you're going to push him off the porch, and then you're going to push him off of your property completely. And then after, you get him off of your property, then you turn around, you wipe your hands, and then you walk and go back inside. Does anybody have a problem with that? Does anybody think that a crime has been committed? Because if a police officer comes to the scene, they could either A, think you're guilty, or B, think you're enforcing the Third Amendment. It's either one or the other. So if you have an average American just sitting there reading the Bill of Rights, and he's presuming that Amendment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are his American rights. He believes that the first 8 amendments are across the board, normal basic rights that all of us Americans agree upon, but some police officer disagrees. And then he puts it in front of a judge, and then he disagrees. And then the prosecutor, since they've captured a body, now they want to press, say, assault charges. You push this poor Air Force man, you know? You're supposed to support the troops. Technically speaking, you'd like to think that a judge or a prosecutor, since they're supposed to be, on the up and up when it comes to the law, they would say, wait a second. Not only are you allowed to kick an Air Force guy out of your house, you're allowed to kick anybody out of your house that you don't want there. I mean, the Third Amendment doesn't just presume that you can kick. The Third Amendment doesn't just presume that you could kick Air Force people out, but it's saying with the consent of owner. So it's kind of presuming that you have a right to your own house, and then you can pick and choose who you allow to stay. Hey! Hey! Can you all knock it off? Now I'm trying to talk about the Third Amendment. What do you know about the Third Amendment? It's part of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And if some damn judge and some damn cop says that you don't have a right to the Third Amendment, then that means you're going to have to fight that damn case for fucking years. Because, technically speaking, the Supreme Court hasn't incorporated it yet. But Justice Scalia is a strict constructionist and an originalist. So I just read the law, I read what Madison said about the law, and they're not allowed to quarter inside my house. So as an American, I enforced my American rights. And since we're all Americans, well, hell, if I pushed that Air Force guy out of my house, off the porch, off my land, well, then I should just be put on the shoulders of everybody. I'm one of the greatest Americans out here. I'm enforcing my rights. And what rights are infringed or violated that, whatever rights I have, we all have. And whatever rights are violated amongst any of us, all of our rights can be violated. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And any excuse serves a tyrant. No. I got all this written out, so all I got to do is just kind of read through it. And if you're mad about mystery, so you got mystery and, no, that's Sassacus. That's Sassacus and mystery. Come on, let me do this. Fucking shit, man. Made the mistake of letting 2 dogs run out, and the other dogs are acting like it's a damn Air Force guy. They act like some Air Force guy is just playing outside the house, and they're barking at them, but it's not barking at threats. It's jealousy. They're just insanely jealous. Even the habeas corpus. We're having problems with habeas corpus. The Homeland Security Secretary is like, habeas corpus? Well, that means we have a right to throw you into a well. That is not what habeas corpus is. That's in the first article. So even though they're incorporating the first 8 amendments, they're ignoring all the amendments afterwards. They're ignoring the preamble, and they're ignoring the body of the Constitution. Is habeas corpus, is that even incorporated to the states? So whereas the incorporation process is interesting by itself, I got some major problems with it, because it's like we have to wait for the Supreme Court to uphold one of our rights and freedoms before we know for sure that it's a right or freedom that we have. And then the Supreme Court has actually created 25 judicially created freedoms. We had 25 freedoms that have been created. 25 freedoms. Just to name a couple of them, you have a right to live with one's relatives. That's Moore v. East Cleveland. You have a right to marry. That's Obergefell v. Hodges, Turner v. Safley, Zablocki v. Redhale, Loving v. Virginia. the right to use contraception in marital bedrooms. I like freedoms. I like all those freedoms. But these are not freedoms in the Constitution. And there's 25 of them that I've listed here, and I'll talk about them some other time. So the Supreme Court can tell us that there's 25 freedoms that they just created out of thin air, and yet the freedoms that are written in our Constitution, they're going to say that those aren't our freedoms. The specifically enumerated rights written in the Constitution, those aren't actionable. I love my freedoms. If SCOTUS wants to create an unwritten Constitution, that's fine and dandy with me. But to deny us, we the people, any of the rights in the Constitution itself is severely fucked up. It's severely off kilter. That knocks my American world off of her access. I'm mortified thinking that perhaps this America that I've been living in really isn't America at all. I was living in some sort of illusion, a hologram, a fairy tale world that my reading of the U.S. Constitution had magically created. Man, we got this Third Amendment. If an Air Force guy comes into my house and I push him out of the house, off the porch, off my land, then I'm going to be celebrated because I enforced my rights. But if a cop wants to make the arrest and the prosecutor and a judge wants to go ahead and rubber stamp what the cop just did, then you're fucked. Then you're just flat out fucked. If they're going to break your Third Amendment, they're going to break your Sixth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. They're going to break all your amendments. They clearly don't think you have civil liberties. And then some of the analysis when it comes to incorporation talks about whether or not you know the history of the thing. Well, I submit to you that because we have the Third Amendment, we don't have the problem of a bunch of Army people and ATF and FBI, and you don't have the problem of Air Force men wanting to live in our homes. You don't have the king, you don't have a standing army, and the standing army isn't just living off of us, living in our homes. So the Third Amendment presumes that we have a right to be safe in our home, and it presumes that we have a right to a home and privacy in some respects too. So there's a lot to the Third Amendment. You can't just throw the Third Amendment out because, well, hell, Air Force people aren't trying to live in our homes, okay? So there was a court case that was something like that. There was something where there was a strike, and then the military came in, and they were living in the places of the strikers. The prison guards had striked, and then the military came in, and they were living in the places that the prison guards had lived. And they said, wait a second, that breaks our Third Amendment. So in my world, you don't actually need the Supreme Court to uphold the Third Amendment. There's only 3 rights of the first 8 amendments that technically haven't been incorporated. Clause 1 of the 5th Amendment, the 3rd Amendment, and the 7th Amendment. So out of the 32 freedoms in our first 8 amendments, we have, 29 of them are upheld by the Supreme Court. But I don't think you need the Supreme Court to uphold it. You have a right to the Third Amendment. Know that you have a right to the Third Amendment. Now that's classical liberalism, and I would need for other people in the world to have read the Third Amendment and believe that the words say what they mean and mean what they say. Just like John 1:1. The word is, God is the word, and the word is God. It says what it means and means what it says. 55 miles per hour is 55 miles per hour. Nobody could pass 55 miles per hour. Air Force men can't stay at anybody's house. Not without their consent. If they get the consent, then they can stay there. But if they don't get the consent, they can't stay. And I get to push them. In fact, I almost think I get to arrest them. I should be able to call the damn police, and then that Air Force guy gets arrested, and then the judge and the prosecutor would just rubber stamp that decision. That's how things should work. But I think that some cops, a lay cop, could think that, oh, he doesn't have the Third Amendment right. You pushed him. I know this Air Force man. Me and him fought back in Nam. We fought in Nam. We had to go through the jungle. Don't tell me my buddy was trying to live in your house without your permission. Don't tell me he was breaking the Third Amendment. That's my buddy. I don't even know who you are, and I know him, so I'm going to go with his side. The word Constitution has such a pleasant charm to it because one's Constitution is also one's ethics and principles, one's soul and inner passion. What is your Constitution? Do you have a resilient and robust set of principles that you believe in? Do you have a set of robust morals that you believe in? Do you even have the Constitution in your heart? Do you even have the Constitution of the Constitution in your heart? How formidable is your Constitution? This is our old foundational parchment that was won by the blood of the revolution many years ago. Why would you have to be a scholar just to understand what rights the Constitution specifically spells out plainly in plain old black and white? So we're going to use the Third Amendment as an example. Let's use the Third Amendment as an example. The Third Amendment clearly means something specific and particular. It shouldn't take you 4+ years of litigation to get that right. If the average American is required to have $1 million in the bank for a good lawyer plus years to fight the case to enforce something so glaringly correct, then perhaps the naysayers are right when they talk about how America really, as Americans, we don't have any freedoms at all. They say you get the freedom and justice you can afford. So is freedom really that onerous? I mean, Thomas Paine warned me. Thomas Paine said, those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it. So technically, no, the Third Amendment hasn't been incorporated yet. That's because SCOTUS technically hasn't gotten a Third Amendment case yet. They can only decide on the cases that come to them. So do they believe the Third Amendment is law or not the law? Who knows? We don't know. The only way we could possibly know is if an Air Force man tries to quarter inside an American's house, and then that American pushes that Air Force man out of the house, off the porch, off the land. And then that American gets arrested, and then gets convicted, and then has to appeal, and then appeal, and then appeal again. And then it gets to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court are like, wait a second here. The Third Amendment does mean what it says, and it does say what it means. Then we'll have the Third Amendment will be incorporated, and therefore it'll apply to the states. So picky SCOTUS has to rule only on the cases that come to their attention, and only the cases that they want to pick. Only the cases that they want to talk about. So we're actually kind of in purgatory limbo here. We don't really know if the Supreme Court would approve our Third Amendment as it's written. So some corrupt and empty suit could claim that the Third Amendment isn't a basis for action. They would be wrong. I'd argue that the reason we haven't had soldiers quartering in our homes, which is a major problem when we lived under the British occupation before 1776, is because of the legal history of the Third Amendment and nothing else. So the reason we don't have military people trying to live inside our homes is because of the Third Amendment. It's because of the legal history. We don't need to have all this long tradition and history of it being used. We have a legal tradition. It's been the law since 1791, and it's still the law today. So I like using the Third Amendment as subject matter for colloquy. I like using the Third Amendment as subject matter for a colloquy. Because the First and Second Amendment have been over-litigated, and frankly, whatever principles govern the Third Amendment, understanding and analysis ought to govern the other civil liberties as well. The underlying principles that would defend the Third Amendment ought to be precisely the same principles that would defend the First and Second and Fourth and Fifth and Sixth and Seventh and Eighth Amendments as well. So, America, if you happen to have a soldier that tries to quarter inside your house, and you're good old Johnny Apple Pie, you push that soldier out of your house, off the porch, off your land, and a cop thinks all that pushing is a crime and arrests you for it wrongly. Once you're taken before a judge or magistrate, that judicial officer should immediately throw that case out and let you go, admonish the cop for not knowing the fucking Constitution, and then your community should lift you up on their shoulders and then parade you around everywhere because you enforced our Constitution. You're a good American, doing what was right. A good police officer would know their Constitution. They would know precisely that what Johnny Applepie did was clearly good and right and proper, and so very, very good and moral and lawful. So very, very American and constitutional. It doesn't matter if a Supreme Court case has incorporated the damn Third Amendment or not. The Third Amendment has been constitutional law since 1791. Nothing has overturned it. You need an amendment to overturn it. And that would take 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the U.S. states to accomplish. That's nearly fucking impossible. And you needed a movement. You would need a movement to repeal the Third Amendment. That would take decades, and ultimately, if it was put up to a vote, a national referendum, we're not going to get rid of our Third Amendment. It would just fail because of course it would. Why are you getting rid of the Third Amendment, you son of a bitch? The Third Amendment is an American right. And it's eternal. I think just because it was written down on our pages, that's why we don't have that problem anymore. Madison was designing the liberties of humankind when he was writing the Bill of Rights. These are the rights for all of mankind. So the Constitution is written for we the people to understand. We the common average worker bee. The common voter, the common citizen, the common people. I read the Third Amendment now, and so now I know that I have a right to keep soldiers from quartering inside my home, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, during times of war, they can quarter inside your home in a manner prescribed by law. So if we was at war, if North Korea had invaded us, and then Congress says, okay, some soldiers can stay in your house because of A, B, C, and D, Congress would have to pass a law. But we're not at war. Since this is a time of peace, the Air Force don't have a right to stay inside your home. Now let's even carry this hypothetical on. Now this hypothetical, let's say that a local state trial judge doesn't free you immediately because he clearly doesn't understand American constitutional law either. And this piece of shit judge, this corrupt fucking malicious judge, attempts to charge you with felony assault. He was friends with the cop. He didn't know who the Air Force guy, but the cop was friends with the Air Force guy, and then the judge is friends with the cop, and they don't know you. So therefore, the judge is going to go along with the cop went along with the Air Force guy, you're just going to get screwed because you didn't know any of these assholes. We'll call this guy Judge Insecure. So Judge Insecure is taking the side of authoritarian fascism. He's taking the side of a police state, of being wrong, of committing crimes against his fellow Americans, just because he's got a body that he wants to keep and he wants to abuse. But Judge Insecure could test the waters. He could put Johnny Appleseed up in front of a grand jury to see what a focus group sampling would do to judge, to be what is right and good and lawful. So just get, 23 grand jurors, see if you can find 12 of them to think that Johnny Appleseed committed a crime by pushing a soldier out of his house, off the porch, off the land. But the grand jury has the Fifth Amendment. So if the damn cop and the damn judge is going to break the First, Second, and Third Amendments, is there any chances that they're going to uphold the Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, or Eighth Amendments as well? That peasant nobody has a constitutional basis for enforcing the Third Amendment, whereas neither the cop nor the judge can claim that awesome and incredible authority. That insecure and malicious, corrupt Judge Insecure, what he is doing now is he's taking an initial wrongful arrest and unlawful detention by the cop, and he's going to multiply this thing into something so much bigger. Now there's going to be 2 years worth of hearings with more constitutional rights being broken. Now that officer will have to testify, but he didn't know about the Third Amendment, so fat chance he knows about the Sixth Amendment. He's going to have to testify. He's going to have to pass out subpoenas and bring in witnesses. He didn't even know about the Third Amendment. So he knows about the Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth Amendment. He don't even know about the Ninth Amendment. Now why in the hell would Judge Insecure do all of that? Well, there is a reason. Because in America, Judge Insecure, he loves his power. Judge Insecure, he loves his precious. Plus, how many other poor, ignorant Americans has Judge Insecure gotten over? Go to any courthouse in America on any given day in any county or city or town or village or hamlet or holler, and there's always a dozen or so poor Americans. There's always like a dozen or so poor Americans who just lined up like cows at a slaughterhouse. They don't have money for a lawyer. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But like cows at a slaughterhouse, next, the proceedings, they feel like church or school. You're supposed to believe that the authorities, they know what's best, they know what's going on. And the poor, uneducated Americans who can't afford a lawyer and don't understand the law enough, well, they obey in hopes that either A, the judge will give them leniency, B, so they can get some justice, or C, maybe they don't know any better. Chalk it up to the public education, the shitty public education. So because Judge Insecure has been treated so powerfully in the past, albeit by those uneducated in law and too poor to afford an attorney reaching out to him for leniency, so Judge Insecure gets used to being an autocratic dictator monarch in one room in one building on a small corner on the face of the earth. He called it a disease. Alito said that that's a disease that's happening in America. These Judge Insecures think that they're the monarch of their little tiny fiefdom in their courtroom, and they're taking it too far. They're autocrats. They're monarchists. They're tyrannical dictators. Now, let's take a look at Christian Glass. What did Colorado cops do to Christian Glass? Well, they murdered him, right? They killed Christian Glass. Christian Glass is a 20-something son of Dutch immigrants. He's in America. He had experienced some road rage. And then after he experienced some road rage on the interstate, he pulls off to the side of the road, and he's feeling angsty, right? He just got shooken up. He pulled over onto a gravel part of the paved street, and then he got stuck on a pile of rocks. So he's shaken up. He did the right thing. He pulled off to the side of the road. He said even when he pulled off the interstate, the guy was following right behind him. So it could just be a tailgater just pushing and pushing and pushing him, and he's like, oh my God, what's happening right now? Well, Christian Glass felt like he had experienced some trauma. He needed a little push off the pile of rocks, so he thought he did the right thing, and he called the police. That turned out to be a fatal mistake. Calling the police in Colorado turned out to be a fatal move for Christian Glass. Christian Glass was murdered by those Colorado cops in June 2022. He was just stuck on a pile of rocks. You treat others the way you want to be treated. Use your push bar, push him off the rocks, follow him for about 5 to 10 minutes, see if he's driving fine, and let him go the fuck home. But the cops murdered him. They jumped on his hood, and they pointed the gun into Christian's heart, and they pulled the trigger, and they murdered him. Ultimately, his parents are going to sue Colorado, and they're going to win $19 million for that. $19 million fucking dollars. That was a $19 million mistake. You had like 6 fucking cops there, all of them yelling at him. Come on, Christian. Just get out, Christian. All of them with their guns pointed at this fucking 20-something-year-old kid who went to the park. He had rock hammers, and he was studying, geology. The guy that murdered Christian Glass is going to be sentenced to 3 years in jail. 3 years? Only 3 years for murdering a person? And then the rest of the cops are just slapped on the wrist. They hardly got anything. Now, Colorado had passed police reform laws after Elijah McClain was killed in 2019 for no good reason by the Colorado police. Elijah McClain was just walking on a sidewalk. But just because you pass some police reform laws, that doesn't change the culture of Colorado. You would need lawyers and judges and cops and citizens who know the new laws, and they're courageous enough to stand up and enforce the police reform laws. So they're institutionalized. They're institutionalized. Tradition and history. Well, we've always just beat up people that we wanted to beat up, and then we just rubber stamp it, then straight to hell. Christian Glass was murdered in Colorado because the cops couldn't let it go. They wanted Christian Glass to get out of the car so they could put their greasy hands on him, arrest him, slap some handcuffs on him, charge him with the crime, fingerprint him, take a mugshot of him, do a perp walk, make him sit in a tiny 5x5 cell, Put him through the wash, so to speak. Make him obey. Christian Glass was scared, and rightfully so. He wasn't crazy. The only crazy people on the scene were those goddamn Colorado cops. Those are the only crazy people on the scene when Christian Glass got shot and murdered. So the uniforms and the badges and the hats, they weren't people there to help Christian Glass. The uniforms and the badges and the hats, they were the monsters. They were insane, sadistic monsters. They were brainwashed with groupthink. They were yelling at him, threatening to break his window, pretending to empathize with him while sinister and pernicious intentions governed them. Just get out of the car, Christian, they beckoned. Just get out of the car. Just comply, Christian Glass. It'll all be okay, Christian, if you just comply. Just comply, Christian Glass. Just comply. A commanding officer told an officer at the scene that if Christian Glass wasn't homicidal or suicidal and he wasn't acting in a way that would suggest that he was a danger to himself or to others, to just let him go. Just walk the fuck away. Walk away from the scene. He's not a danger to himself or to others. Why are you bothering him? Why are you threatening him? Why are you yelling at him? The escalation of force, I guess they did the escalation by the book. But don't engage. Don't engage. They kept engaging. They kept pushing. They kept pushing. One guy reaches for him. Christian Glass jerks. Then the guy on the hood fucking shoots him. Only the guy that shot him in the fucking heart is going to get punished. The guy reaching off to the side, the ladies, the men, everybody that was around, all the damn aggressors, all the people that supported the murderer and encouraged the murderer and aided and abetted the murderer, they didn't get in trouble at all. They couldn't just walk away from him. They couldn't just use their push bar on their car, push him off the rocks, and get him on his journey. Let him get on with it. Let him go the fuck home. Was that even considered by any of those who swore and protect to uphold our Constitution? Who swore to protect and serve us and to uphold our Constitution and enforce our laws? There was a woman in New York City subway who was fully engulfed in flames. And 2 or 3 police officers walked right past her. They didn't do a damn thing. She was fully engulfed in flames. And they just kind of walked right past like it wasn't even happening. They didn't run to get some water. They didn't pull off their shirts and try to mat the fire out. Nothing. But this is a nation who just produced a shadow of a Palestinian girl, not 3 years old, walking through a genocidal fire that's nearly 2 years old. We just killed a 3-year-old Palestinian girl. She was walking through the fire. In Vietnam, you had the napalm, and the girl was running out scared, and that, galvanized the nation. We are so far from our humanity, it's not even funny. Our technology has way surpassed our humanity because there is no humanity. Why does the genocide keep fucking going? Why does the genocide keep on fucking going? It goes on and on, my friend. And it never stops. How could Colorado cops just walk away from Christian Glass? Christian Glass stopped talking to him. Christian Glass rolled up his window. Well, he disrespected their authority. How are Colorado cops supposed to walk away from Christian Glass after they had their authority disrespected? So the Colorado cops, they wolf-packed and they dogpiled other poor and unsuspecting Americans once before. They've done this before. They wolf-packed, they dogpiled, they got away with it. The DA and the Judge Insecure and Ego the DA, they upheld those last kidnappings that they did. They kidnapped the body. They gave the court something to do, plus all those parasites, all those probation officers and lawyers and other court hangers-on. A bunch of parasites to eat and feast upon the kidnapped body. Habeas corpus is you have the body. Once we have the body, then we get to eat and feast upon it. Perhaps they thought they were upholding the general welfare and ensuring domestic tranquility, and by scapegoating some poor, unsuspecting fool who wasn't dangerous to anybody, they could pretend that justice was being done. 60% of all violent crimes, they get away with it. 60% of all violent criminals get away with it. So let's compare Christian Glass, who was an innocent person, to an actual dangerous situation. So you had Uvalde, right? What state was that? Southern state somewhere? Was it Louisiana or Alabama? In Uvalde, this is a city. It was a school, right? You have a school shooting. A person goes into the school and they're just shooting people up left and right. All the cops get to the scene and they're all organized, but the main sheriff, the police chief or whatever, he doesn't say go in. They kind of just sort of creep in over here. He's scared. He likes doing the press conferences. He likes having the power. He just doesn't want the responsibility of actually stopping a dangerous person. So they don't go in and they let the mass gunmen keep on killing a bunch of kids. Why are we getting so used to a bunch of kids just being fucking killed? I'm so disgusted with public education and the fact that you're just going to allow any random person to go in and just start shooting them all up, and when the police don't do a damn thing, when there's actual dangerous people, the cops are too afraid to actually stand up. When it comes to messing with some sort of poor American, unsuspecting, maybe uneducated person, they don't hesitate at all. Now, this is, pockets. I'm sure there might be, I'd like to think there might be some areas in America that's okay. But the cops in Uvalde, they were ducking and cowering. They let the gunmen continue to murder people for minutes after they were on the scene. Christian Glass, who had called them for help, who had no gun whatsoever, got shot and murdered. Meanwhile, fucking mass shooters just executing kids left and right. One cop wanted to go in. His wife was a teacher at that school, so he felt like he wanted to go in to save his wife. Commanding officer said not to go in. Some of the mothers actually went into the school and took their own children out by the hand. And they had to push through the officers who complained that they weren't allowed to do that. You can't go in there. That's our job. You're not allowed to go in there and save your own child. Are you fucking kidding it? How much easier is it to violently oppress a good, obedient, moral, and lawful person than it is to subdue a crazy and dangerous person who has snapped a mass gunman who is slaughtering people left and right and committing major atrocities? Wouldn't it be easier just to go after the good, obedient, and moral and lawful person? Wouldn't it be easier just to arrest the victim and to allow the perpetrators to go free? Maybe Judge Insecure believes that's how America is supposed to work. Maybe Judge Insecure and Ego the DA thinks that we're a well-oiled police state. A cop produces a body, well, we got to abuse that body all the live long day. Judge Insecure and Ego the DA, they got to put a stamp of approval on it. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. The cops nab them and the courts slap them. You put them through the wash, put them through the rocket docket slaughterhouse. Who gives a shit if the dangerous and the criminal are getting away with 60% of their violent crimes? Who gives a shit if it's the moral and the honest and the good and the lawful who are being raped by Judge Insecure and Ego the DA? Why? Because they love their precious. They love their precious. Their precious power, their precious bullshit authority. They've been able to scare a bunch of other people into submitting. Now they just want everyone to submit. By endorsing the kidnappings, whenever Judge Insecure is in the need of protection from a criminal, he can rely on the arresting officers to stop some criminal committing a crime against him. So Judge Insecure and Ego the DA, they get police protection. They scratch each other's back. The judge scratches the cop's back, and then the cop will scratch the judge's back. But who actually has the power? I mean, we the people have the power, right? Nothing is sovereign in America except the people are the sovereign. And then what does Christianity says? Who has the power? All power belongs to God. All power belongs to God. That's Psalm 62:11. That's 1 Peter 5:11. All power belongs to God. Now, I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. I don't believe in invisible man's up in the clouds. I'm not even for sure about the historicity of Jesus Christ. But I do believe in a God in some ways. And then I'm a Christian. I'm actually more of a Christian than a lot of Christians. That's just how I felt when I was younger. But now I'm enjoying my Christianity now. Now, I don't believe there's an invisible man up in the clouds just staring down at us, judging us all day long, peeping through the fucking curtains, watching us take a dump. I'm sure That's not the case. There is no invisible man up in the clouds, you motherfuckers. And if you think that there's an invisible man up in the clouds, then you're the one that needs to have an M1 hold. You're the one with some mental health issues. You're the one that needs to be thrown in a goddamn mental ward, you fucking psycho. You think there's an invisible man up in the clouds? The fuck's the matter with you? Somebody wanted to say that he was talking about skinwalkers. Okay, well, you talk about an invisible man up in the clouds. So I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. I don't know if Jesus actually exists. I don't believe in an invisible man up in the clouds. So you should pay attention. All power belongs to God. So what am I talking about? Well, God is the great spirit of ultimate goodness. The arc of history bends towards morality and justice. The great spirit of ultimate goodness is utilitarian. They want all of us to do well. We don't need a balance of good and evil. We need to have 100% of people that can, send their kids to school and then be able to find the good jobs and to do well. You work hard for it, you play by the rules, and you work hard, then you should be able to elevate yourself. God is the great spirit of ultimate goodness, and when one is doing something for selfish reasons, when somebody's doing something for selfish reasons to massage their own ego, and there's nobody to check them, they don't check themselves, they end up going hog wild, drunk with power, hurting all that they get away with hurting. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The great desideratum problem. Madison had a great desideratum problem. The great desideratum problem that James Madison had pointed out was, sure, you got the three branches that will check each other, but how do you get each branch to check themselves? And then how do you get the whole government to check themselves? What if the whole government is involved in some corrupt and malicious shit that they're all okay with? So the great desideratum question is this: how does each branch of government check themselves? So I think a way that you could do it is just check in with what the great spirit of ultimate goodness would want to do. If your ego is just taking you on a path and you're just going on and on and on, you could check in with the great spirit of ultimate goodness. And what does the great spirit of ultimate goodness want? They want what's best for everybody. Yeah, you want the power, you want the money, you want the credit, the vanity, right? It's all, vanity of vanities. It's all meaningless, like Ecclesiastes says. So a good judge can check his own ego with the great spirit of ultimate goodness. In times of peace, violence is the last option. And it shouldn't be considered until all other options have been exhausted. Especially if it's a peaceful situation. There's a cat up in the tree. Should we shoot it? No, you should not shoot that cat. A good judge can then step behind his ego, and he can dwell on the question, what does the great spirit of ultimate goodness want? Or in Christian speak, what would Jesus do? Jesus points out how the Pharisees, they talked about tithing mint, dill, and cumin. They talk about tithing mint, dill, and cumin as if that's, the most important law of the land. But they forgot the important virtues of faith, mercy, and justice. They forgot justice. The Holy Spirit, there's that part in Acts when the Pharisees were talking about Paul. And the Pharisees said, we find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him? I'm filled with the great spirit of ultimate goodness. I am passionate. I am passionate for justice. I am passionate for righteousness. I am passionate that we all can get to the promised land. And we all can have good lives. The vast majority of us, 99 to nearly 100%. Let's aim for 100%. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to the evil doers. That's Proverbs 21:15. This is the book of wisdom. When evil deeds are not punished speedily, the hearts of the sons of men is fully set to do evil. That's Ecclesiastes 8:11. These are good arguments. These are good perspectives. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous, but terror to the evildoers. When evil deeds are not punished speedily, the hearts of the sons of men is fully set to do evil. God is a utilitarian. The great spirit of ultimate goodness wants what is best for the vast majority of us all. Thomas Paine and John Adams were utilitarians as well. Perhaps the accused really did injure another person and they're deserving of punishment. Or maybe, just maybe, the accused actually read the fucking Constitution. And they know that it's against the rules for a soldier to quarter inside their home, because that's what the fucking Constitution says. Or maybe, just maybe, the accused has been a victim of 200 motherfucking crimes. And by going through the judicial process, a full and fair adjudicating procedure, they expect to be able to point those criminals out. They expect to be exonerated and for those criminals to go to fucking jail. Because, my God, why wouldn't the criminal justice system that we spend billions of dollars on not want to hear about criminals who are injuring others? Judge Insecure and Ego the DA, they don't want to hear about the actual crimes. The criminal justice system isn't just a bunch of perfunctory steps that a judge and Ego the DA need to check off in order to ruin the life of the accused. If the accused is innocent, like Joe Bryan was, remember Joe Bryan, what you sons of bitches did to Joe Bryan, then the process should exonerate him. And if that judge is smart, perhaps the accused was being bullied by criminals and is a victim of 200 crimes. There's others who need to be held to account, who's actually deserving of punishment. Then that means the criminal justice system, the process should be able to do both. To A, exonerate the innocent, and B, unearth those actual 3 or 4 criminals who committed 200 motherfucking crimes against me. The fucking Phil Greenies and Sam Jepson, the goddamn motherfucking Robert Pickerels, and Kitty Capon, and Noah Spaulding, and who the fuck else ever. That's what the great spirit of ultimate goodness would want. Joe Bryan served 30 years. He was released when he was 80 years old, but still on probation. He got to live 4 years as an old man on probation before he died. He was an innocent man. Why'd y'all lock Joe Bryan up for 30 fucking years? And then when he was freed, you still had him on probation. What the fuck is the matter with you assholes? A person who's complied with the Third Amendment is much, much different than a despicable monster who just murdered people's pets, stalked them, spotlighted them, and late into the night tailgated them and shot 39 shots at him. Do you know the difference between a person that upholds the Third Amendment and somebody that's stalking and spotlighting, tailgating, murdering people's pets, and then attempted murdering you? Can you tell the difference between attempted murder and a couple warning shots that didn't harm anybody? I had 39 shots that whizzed by my head. 39 shots, and this Colorado fucking nightmare doesn't fucking end. It goes on and on, my friend. That's attempted murder for no rhyme or reason. The King super shooter got an additional 48 years. 48 years tacked onto his sentence for each attempted murder. So Sam Jepson should be looking at 48 years in prison. Instead, you stupid motherfuckers want to protect the Sam Jepsons of the world, the Robert Pickerels of the world, the Phil Greenies of the world. And it sucks that if I'm going through an experience where just a handful of fucking criminals in the neighborhood and then a handful of piece of shit fucking officials are going to fuck with me, how many other good people, Mr. Rogers, are out in this world who understand the law, who's moral and lawful, and they getting the fuck over because they're the good ones and the honest ones. And a bunch of fucking criminals are all over the place. Machiavelli says that the good will perish in a world of evil. Of course, we should want to have more moral and lawful people in our neighborhood. I want more moral people and lawful people in my neighborhood. Of course, Americans should be able to buy land and build themselves a house, work on their careers, and build a family, of course. I want more moral people and lawful people, people that want to get a job and work hard, play by the rules, find a spouse, build a family, offer something positive to society, something progressive and positive. Be of some use to society. That's what I want. When I was building my house, I kept on seeing my future daughter descend down the steps that I had constructed in her lovely dress, who was going to meet her date, who was waiting in the foyer to take her to prom. That's what was governing me. My future family. I hadn't had a safe home in order to live the life that I want to live. If you don't have a safe home or a safe neighborhood, you go get a job and come back and all your stuff is gone. You just work for the damn criminals. So I was working on building myself a safe house in a safe neighborhood so I could get a job, get a career, build a family, maybe construct a picket fence, maybe raise a fucking garden. Robert Pickerel, Sam Jepson, Phil Greene didn't want that, and then Cruz Soto went along with Joe Canty's bullshit, and then Ann Kelly and Michael Gonzalez didn't fucking want it. That was taken from me. You motherfuckers took that from me because I came out of my house. I came out of my house and I talked to the cop. The cop who had already had it in his mind to arrest me. Because I was somebody he didn't know, and I had called 911 too many times, and he was fucking sick of it. You know, as a professor of law, my first assignment to my students would be to combine our state's Bill of Rights with the federal government's in order to find out precisely what our bushel of freedoms, what they really are. There's a lot of similar laws in our state constitutions to our federal government's. And then there's cousins. You got twins, so there's verbatim freedoms, and then there's cousins, so very similar, but not the same. And then there's exclusive. They're completely different. What does all that mean? How do the exclusive rights, how do they stand up? So only the state will enforce the exclusive rights and vice versa. And then the cousins, the discrepancy, who's going to iron out that discrepancy? You're going to iron out the similar cousin rights and then harmonize them as best as we can so we can fully embrace them. And for the twin rights, we could feel quite secure with those rights since all three branches of both of our governments and our federalist system will protect them. I see a world where a household or a village, holler, neighborhood, town, city, county, state, even a nation would have an American preambulist culture. Could you imagine all of us being Americans? Where we wake up for our day and we set upon accomplishing the 6 end objects of the U.S. Constitution. What are you doing today? Well, I'm going to ensure domestic tranquility. Well, how are you going to do that? A, B, C, D, E, and F. I'm going to promote the general welfare. I'm going to go form a more perfect union. I'm going to go establish some justice. I'm going to provide for the common defense. I'm going to protect freedom today. I'm going to protect the blessings of liberty for myself and for my posterity today. And then by the end of the day, how many of those 6 objects of the U.S. Constitution did you accomplish? That would be amazing. Could you imagine having a neighborhood full of Americans who actually listen to their preamble and then use those 6 virtues as a checklist in order to do those 6 virtues every fucking day? That would be amazing. That would be incredible. There's a saying that a person who represents himself as a fool is a client. Sure, having somebody else defend you, you know, with a vengeance, having a warrior advocate, an advocate that actually goes into the courtroom and actually defends you, that's way better than a person who just defends themselves. But many times, right off the top, lawyers who have to obey the judge's orders tell their clients to cut a fucking deal, to accept a lesser charge, just to get them out of the abusive process. Let them go on their way with a small fine, some probation, a warning, some slap on the wrist, because they know, because they too know much about how Judge Insecure loves his precious. He loves his precious, his monarchy, his absolute power. During oral arguments, John Sauer recently was arguing about birthright citizenship, and Alito had pointed to a disease that happens in trial courts when Judge Insecure becomes a monarch in his own little fiefdom, and he feels like his ultimate power should be applied nationally. The Constitution isn't long. In Pueblo, Colorado, a young politician there pointed out how nobody was on the same page. Well, the short Constitution puts us all on the same page. Literally, that same piece of parchment is the fundamental and foundational law from which all of our other laws emanate from. How ironic how immigrants who want to be naturalized as Americans need to know so much more about our country, including the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and even habeas corpus. But collectively, we Americans can't, or we won't, so we don't. The Homeland Security says they don't even know about habeas corpus. The damn president says the Declaration of Independence says that we should all dance, sing kumbaya, and just be friends. And they said, aren't you supposed to enforce the Constitution? He's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to enforce the Constitution. That's the oath. You don't know if you're supposed to enforce the fucking Constitution? You don't know what the damn habeas... That's our leadership. The people that's running America don't understand the Declaration of Independence. They don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand habeas corpus, the Bill of Rights. They're a bunch of fascist, totalitarian, oppressor, molester sons of bitches. So that judge gets the body. He wants to abuse that body all the live long day without repercussion, without regard to truth or justice, right or wrong. Justice needs truth to stand upon, and law and order needs both truth and justice as a foundation. So therefore, justice and law and order all stand upon the firm foundation of the immortal and immutable and everlasting truth. Judge Insecure and DA, the ego, wants to break that body's spirit, and if he can't, then break that body. Get that body to kiss his butt and grovel to him. Get the body to say, please, Mr. Honor, sir. Please, Mr. Honor Judge, sir, I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry. And make you get on your hands and knees and beg him for his forgiveness for something that wasn't wrong in the first place, but was in fact very much right. Appeal to his mercy, and then once that happens, Judge Insecure and Ego the DA, they'll love it. They'll love the power for itself, and then they'll pretend to feel vindicated for their abuse of process, because clearly if the victim is asking for forgiveness, then they must have done something wrong, or else they wouldn't be asking for forgiveness, right? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's an illogical tautology. Judge Insecure and Ego the DA may think that the law is whatever I say it is. The law is whatever I say it is. No ifs, ands, or buts. Instead of the law being the law, they presume that only their interpretation of the law is valid. I've read where in the common law, folks would come with their own law, and people were ready for that. So the judge would say, all right, present your law. What is your law? What was your understanding of the law at the time? There was a Colorado case that said something about it's important for the defendant to submit the instructions because their understanding of the law at the time matters when it came to how they had behaved, how they had acted. George Brockler just talked about how that cop, we need to not just look at whether it was reasonable or not, but we need to know what information he had and he didn't have, and then we need to understand his perspective. So it's incredible that we bend over backwards to try to look over the perspective of Colorado cops and see if they had the information or didn't have the information, and then give them all the benefit of the doubt in the world. And then just somebody that gets arrested just presume that they're pieces of shit deserving of hell. 2 years of hell on earth by the civilian criminals was bad enough, but these fucking government officials, these criminal officials, they're terrible. Shouldn't one presume that folks have their own particular understanding of the law? The law is what it is. The law is there, and we all have some perspective of the thing. Either we ignore it, pretend not to know it. The law is there. It's written in black and white. Judge Insecure and Ego the DA might not see the 55 miles per hour. They might pretend that 55 miles per hour isn't there, the sign, or that you interpret it as 55 miles. Maybe they somebody else. It's 55 miles per hour. It's there, clear as day. The body is taken hostage, and with judicial immunity, nobody can be held to account for this egregious wrong. What the fuck are we doing, America? We can do so much better. Like, what the fuck are we doing? R.I.P. Tecumseh. R.I.P.